So my friend runs a development office. I worked for it at a school called University High School, and they hosted a giving breakfast every single year. It's a very well, I mean, it's not all that traditional, but it was a traditional gratitude event. Once there was an auction, usually there wasn't an auction. There was definitely not a silent auction. It was really just a community gathering and some form of appeal. And after one of these breakfasts, a man emailed the executive director, my friend Julie, and he had attended as the guest of a sponsor. It was, again, a corporate sponsor, and this was one of the employees, a staff employee. He did not raise a paddle. He did not make a donation the day of. He didn't even, and I think at this time it was like maybe 20, I think it was like 2017. So we still had the impact cards on the tables. He didn't put his name on any of this, but he emailed Julie and he invited her to coffee. So a lot of times I know this happens, and it's easy to move past in the busyness post event. You've sometimes even taken a couple of days off, which is typically not a very good idea, but that happens a lot as well. But for whatever reason, Julie said yes. She went to coffee with this gentleman. And then the other thing that's notable is that she scheduled the coffee for very close in. She scheduled it for the very next week. She didn't, waste much time. She didn't stay. None of the signals were there. There was no, and I don't know that they were using wealth screening at the time, but there was none of the, signals of any sort of major donor profile were visible with this gentleman. But she had the coffee anyway, and they had a very real, this was actually very common of Julie, but they had a very real conversation, and he asked very thoughtful questions. This was actually an organization that worked in recovery spaces, and it turned out that this gentleman's son had just entered into recovery, and a month later, with zero solicitation and actually, frankly, very little follow-up from Julie following that coffee, he sent the school a $10,000 check. That $10,000 check is directly attributable to that event. But what's really going on in the story is it's not about luck. It's a story about a quiet observer who self-identified. And then somebody that worked for the nonprofit that actually went the extra few steps to engage before the energy of the event had completely dissipated. So, and it turned out that guy had actually been thinking about this organization for some time prior to it, but the sponsor connection hid him in the room, again, hidden in plain sight. And he just needed a reason. He just needed just a little bit more to get to the donation. So the quiet observers in your audiences are doing this every single year at every single event. And so many of those signals are there if you begin and when you begin to start looking for them. So as a suggestion, before your next event, sit down with your team and assign a single staff member. And again, not your executive director, not your development director, but one designated person. This actually could be a volunteer as well, that they do nothing for the 48 hours after the event except respond to the signals. They gather the emails from the attendees. They hear about and ask for the text that the board members received, reporting conversations, the notes from volunteers around who talked to whom. The person's only job is to make every single warm touch, every signal that was sent warm touched by the end of those 2 days, by the end of that 48 hours. And, that's something that is I have never been a part of an event where I have known a single designated person to have that job, to do that job. So it's a very strong suggestion that I'm going to make to all of you.